Okay, we are recording, and for the time being, Paul Joyce will be heading up the meeting. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order today's meeting of the Distress Unit Appeals Board and recognize that we have a quorum. Courtney, I think we need to do a roll call on that to make sure we have a quorum.
Okay, all right. Let's see, I've got Wes Bennett.
I'm here.
All right, Tracy Brown.
Present.
Rebecca Kubacki.
Here.
And Paul Joyce.
Here.
So I do have we have 4 out of our 5 voting members currently, and Chairman McAdams should be joining us later.
And when that happens, I will turn it over to him. So, with that recognized, we do have a quorum. The meeting is opened. Would like to recognize that we have posted the meeting and we are in compliance with the open door law. The next step, we need to approve the minutes for the February 25th, 2021 public meeting. With that, has everybody had an opportunity to read those minutes? I know Courtney has sent them out.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the minutes as drafted.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion on it? Anybody have any corrections to make? With none seen, I'd like to take a vote to approve the meeting minutes for February 25th, 2021. Courtney?
Sure. Yep. And actually, before we do that, can I just confirm that second was that you, Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. All right. So Wes Bennett.
Aye.
Tracy Brown.
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki.
Yes.
And Paul Joyce.
Yes.
All right. 4-0.
Next on the meeting, I think Courtney will go over this, and we're going to talk about the contract approval by the executive director.
Yes. Since our last meeting, I have done one contract approval that is included in your board packet. This is for a partial roof replacement at Beveridge Elementary. The project was bid out using a similar process to what will be discussed a little bit later when we talk about some other roofing contracts. 3 bids were received, and EC Babila, they received the highest rating and ultimately were selected as the vendor to provide this service. They are a local company located in Gary, and the cost for this project is anticipated to be $67,689. So I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Courtney, when we talk about the contracts later, the other roofing contracts that the same contractor is going to do, we will do an acceptance of a contract or discuss that contract at that point in time. Will this one be included within that, or do we have to do a different separate motion for this one?
So this one, actually, I was able to approve this within the authority that you all had delegated to me. So this one has already been approved. So the contracts that we'll deal with later in the meeting are completely separate from this.
When do they anticipate the work beginning and ending?
Let me see if Rob's on here to build that.
Yeah, you're talking about for this Beveridge gym.
Yes.
We're hoping that it's starting very, very soon. We want to get it done before, the majority of the spring rain.
That'd be a good idea. Next up on our agenda, if anybody doesn't have any other discussions, we'll move on. Seeing none on this one. Courtney, next is the public comment period. Do we have anybody signed up to do public comment?
Yes, we do. So give me just a minute to modify my screens here and get the timer up, and then we'll start into public comment.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, The first individual we have for public comment is Clifton Brown. Mr. Brown, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we can hear you, so please go ahead.
Just wanted to make a quick comment. Very proud of what's happening in the school district. I was at the high school for one of the games during the regional, and things look really good over there. Looks a lot better than when I was there before, so I can see the progress. Spoke to several people, very professional, what's going on, and I'm very pleased to say that I can see the progress, and I'm more than happy to continue to support Gary Public Schools. I like the way things are going, and that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to make sure that that I got that comment out there, because I'm very pleased and very impressed as a community member what I see here in Gary.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you.
Right. Next, we have Michael Ensign with First Student. Let me unmute your line. All right, Mr. Ensign?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Ensign. I'm the Business Development Director for First Student, and I live in Bloomington, Indiana. For those of you who are not familiar, First Student is the largest provider of student transportation in North America, and we've aggressively bid on the transportation contracts for Gary Community School Corporation over the past several years. I've worked in partnering with K-12 school districts for almost 20 years, and I've never felt obligated to sign up for public comments at a board meeting before today. Over the years, First Student has shown a continued and unwavering interest in working with Gary Community School corporations. We have been the only other company to provide consistent competitive bids, and I believe our presence in the bid process has led to massive reductions in rates from your incumbent contractor over recent years. Prior to the bid in 2018, the district was paying over $540 per route. That year, First Student submitted the lowest bid and a proposal that would have provided a reduction of approximately 25% in cost. As the low bid by a significant margin, we were surprised First Student was not awarded the contract in 2018. Instead, a rare and unexpected best and final offer process allowed the incumbent contractor to see our bid rates and then dramatically reduce their rates to undercut our price. Value and responsible bidding was not rewarded. 3 years later, we contemplated if we should bid this contract after what we believe to be unfair practices in 2018. I brought up my concerns in the pre-bid meeting on October 12th, 2020, and I was assured this would not happen again. After submitting a competitive bid, First Student was finally awarded the contract by the school corporation in an official letter of award on January 11th, stating that the evaluation has been completed. I repeat, the evaluation has been completed, and First Student's proposal was selected for award. We immediately entered into contract negotiations and came to terms on an agreeable contract to be approved by the DUAB. 2 hours before the meeting, I was informed that our contract was pulled from the meeting agenda. For multiple weeks, we were told by district leadership that this approval process would be rescheduled and the contract would be approved. On Friday, March 19th, we were surprised and very disappointed to learn that the district did not intend to stand by the letter of award. Rather, our bid was going to be compared to a renewal price that was supplied in a contract from 2018 from a completely different RFP and procurement process with different route volumes and different RFP specification. Since then, our inquiries to the district have gone unheard. I am extremely disappointed in the delays and inaction by the MGT and DUAB, and I ask, why would First Student or any other reputable company ever bid on another transportation contract that serves Gary Community School Corporation? What are the implications of no competition on future contracts, and how will this affect the taxpayers? If this is how responsible contractors are treated, First Student will not be bidding this work in the future. I ask you to reconsider the decision and approve the contract that was negotiated with First Student. We started up a 700-employee operation in Indianapolis Public Schools last year during a pandemic, and we are well equipped to start up operations in Gary if you act now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Next, I have Gleneva Dunham. Ms. Dunham?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I am Gleneva Dunham. I'm the president of the Gary Teachers Union, local number 4, AFT, AFL-CIO. I'm also the president of AFT Indiana, the state federation, and a vice president of AFT, our national organization. I've been the president of the Gary Teachers Union, Local 4, since the beginning of the state takeover and the district being managed by MGT. I have traveled to Indianapolis for these DUAB meetings under emergency managers Jack Martin, Dr. Peggy Hinckley, Dr. Peter Mariquez, and now Dr. Paige McNulty. Since I have only 3 minutes, I would like to just jump right to my message. I believe that the current team leading the Gary School Corporation is probably the most difficult yet that I've seen. As a union, we have been working cooperatively with MGT every time they deliver a new emergency manager to us. But with this team, not so much. As teachers and paraprofessionals, we are being told on a daily basis what we are to do and not to do. I represent over 95% of all the teachers and paraprofessionals in the Gary Community School Corporation. The buzzword is collaboration, but there's very little of that going on. The morale of the members of Gary Teachers Union is very low. The district is being run with an overseer effect. As being the governing body, DUAB, of the Gary Community School Corporation, I would urge you to really find out what is going on a daily basis with Gary Community School. I sit at these meetings month after month. I hear you approving contract after contract. I am a 43-year veteran with the Gary Community School Corporation, 31 years spent in the classroom teaching kindergarten. Schools are supposed to be about families, communities, and relationships. As a kindergarten teacher, I definitely know about relationships. Teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. If teachers and paras are not being respected, I can tell you the same is happening for parents and students as well. As a board, if you really and truly want to know how Gary Community School Corporation is doing, take a minute out of your busy schedule and talk to the practitioners. We are the glue holding the corporation together. I had a lengthy conversation with Eric Parrish a couple of weeks ago about some occurrences in the district that tilted the needle for the Gary Teachers Union. I have heard no response. And I can assure you, those of you that have been on this board for the duration of this takeover, as Courtney as well, knows that the Gary Teachers Union have been willing workers with this process. There's a lot more that I can say, but I will leave you with this in the words of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. The children in Gary matter. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Dunham. All right. Next, I have Ms. Lisa Jones. Ms. Jones?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. I am a resident of Gary, Indiana for 50 years. I would like to say I'm very excited about the new vaccination site, which is at Gary Roosevelt High School. I am an alumni of that school, class of 1989. I am very excited to see that the city of Gary and the Gary Community School Corporation and all parties are working together. Also, during the basketball regionals, I was very excited to see all the renovation that was done at the high school. Very excited to see what was going on at Gary Westside. It was very nice, very clean. I saw all of people working together. It was very presentable, and I was very excited to be a part of Gary, Indiana. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. And I have one last individual signed up. I have Dr. Michaela Spangenberg. Dr. Spangenberg?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. MGT has been interfering in the functioning of our advisory board. I don't know if you are all aware of what's been going on. Just in case you're not, I hope to make you aware of the details of this morning and to ask you to intervene in what they are doing. Contrary to what was established in Senate Enrolled Act 567 and what is now part of our education code and our election code, MGT have taken it upon themselves to try to replace existing advisory board members who ask tough questions that MGT doesn't want to answer. MGT took advantage of an internal dispute that they should have had no involvement in. A member of the advisory board's leadership initially was trying to prevent an internal election of officers from taking place and began to spread rumors that some of the board members were not actually properly appointed and that the seats were vacant. MGT should have let the matter be handled by the state and local election boards as outlined by law. Instead, they seized the opportunity to try to remove those board members who provide the most stringent oversight of their activities and to replace them with their own appointees. When they seemingly realized that they could not get away with this, they instead started withholding information from these board members about when the advisory board is meeting to try to seemingly prevent their attendance. It seems that they are trying to bully these board members into resigning or to force them to miss enough meetings that the seats are considered vacated, which under the way the law is actually written now is impossible, as they're required to miss more meetings in a year than are currently allowed to be held by the advisory board. But nonetheless, they are trying. They've ignored both our local election board as well as publicly available information provided by the Office of Indiana's Secretary of State, which establishes that Lorena Carter, Robert Coleman, and Mary Ann Canty-Reedus are officially recognized members of the advisory board for the Gary Community School Corporation. The actions that MGT is taking at this time are illegal and unethical. They are interfering with the official business of an elected body and its officials. It's a violation of the civil rights of every resident in Gary, as well as the laws of the state of Indiana. We need you to step in and prevent further interference in our electoral processes by MGT, who claim they act on your behalf. Let our advisory board in full get back to their work of representing our community. Voters should be the ones who decide who serves our community board, not MGT. Also, as a side note, MGT may claim that they accepted every applicant for the Gary referendum ambassadors, but I know this is not the case, as I applied and heard nothing back, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. They make superficial and dishonest shows of being inclusive and open to community oversight, but in reality, if this was the case, they wouldn't be trying to eliminate half our advisory board and on an ongoing basis, failing to collaborate with our teachers, our parents, and our community. Thank you.
Dr. Thank you. All right, thank you. And that was all of the public comment that we had for today. So give me one more minute here. I'll switch back presenter role. Here. All right, Mr. Joyce, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And we do appreciate everyone that took their time to come and give comment, and would definitely take everything everybody said into consideration. With that, we will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Gary School Communicate Corporation Manager Update. Up first will be Dr. Paige McNulty. Paige, if you would please start with the manager update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Joyce. Yes, so as you've been hearing from several people already, I'd first like to start with congratulating our basketball team for sure. I'm very proud of the young men that represented our school district, as well as our coaching staff, our athletic director. They've all worked tirelessly to make this happen. The boys not only represented themselves as far as their athletic ability by winning sectionals and regionals and going to semi-state, but I was also extremely proud of them and how they've handled themselves as students first and then athletes. Our coach and athletic director implemented study tables for the first time this year. So all of those gentlemen were attending study tables. They're all on the honor roll so that they can move forward with options when they go to college to also explore academic success as well as athletic success. So we're proud about that. I also want to thank the fire department, who gave our school district a huge parade on the way out of town as the students were going to semi-state and then on their way back into town as well. So we want to thank everybody. It was a huge community effort. And again, kudos to our team. We look forward to many more successful teams in the future. I also want to talk about that we have teachers that were issued new laptops as a result of the GEARS grant. I think you might have remembered that I applied for the GEARS grant many months ago. And we were afforded the GEARS grant. So with the funds, the teachers all received new laptops, which have cameras and updated Wi-Fi capability for them. So those have all been issued to our teachers, and we are honored to be able to have received those funds. Also, we have implemented the Safe Visitor Program for all of our district schools. And this program now enables us to have a safety check at all school buildings for visitors entering the building. People have to show an ID as they come in, and it's scanned through our security system. And this just gives another layer of protection for anybody who walks into the building. And that happens every time someone comes in, a volunteer or anybody that comes in. So those have all been installed and are ready to go. And we appreciate the efforts of our team getting that going. I've been talking a lot about our partnership with IUN, and I just wanted to update the progress on what's been happening with that. We have over 30 teachers who have entered into that IUN cohort who are continuing on with their teacher certification licensure. It's been a wonderful partnership with IUN, and we continue to expand that as we move forward. Many of our neighboring districts in Northwest Indiana have also signed on for that cohort opportunity, so which I think is going to be a great thing, because we'll have more teachers involved. They'll be able to share their experiences with one another and collaborate more with our neighboring districts. We are offering the second cohort moving forward, so we have more teachers signing up. And we plan to open it up to paraprofessionals as well, so that any para who wants to explore becoming a teacher in their future, we would love to afford them that opportunity. Additionally, we did offer master plus 18 level classes for teachers who wanted to get dual certification. And so we had about 15 teachers take advantage of that, and we paid for that certification as well, so we can offer more dual credits for our students. So that was a great opportunity. We've been partnering with many community businesses and agencies within the community to help our students get those 6 hours that they need towards their graduation requirements for work experience or internship hours. And we're excited that we had, probably 20 businesses reach out to us immediately to offer their businesses for either a virtual internship, work experience, or in person. And one of the other partners that reached out to us was the mayor's office. I want to thank them because they've offered to have many of our students come and work with them on doing some work at City Hall and learning to do some job shadowing there at the mayor's office. Well, we're also working on a joint project with the mayor's office called the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan to help as part of the redevelopment project in Gary. So I think that's a great partnership. As we've mentioned, we have the Referendum Ambassadors Committee that's up and running. We had over 60 applicants, and after I looked at all the applicants, I felt it was a difficult decision to say only 20 of you are going to be selected. We had such a great interest, we decided to take them all. So we're going to have all 60, I think there's almost actually 70 after it's all said and done. They're going to be joining us. The first one's going to be in May, and we're going to do a school budget 101 class the first time we meet. And then at the beginning of July, when the monies start being receipted in, we will meet with everybody in the auditorium. And kind of the plan going forward would be people will break up into subcommittees per their interests. So if someone's interested in talking about athletics, they'll be on a subcommittee for athletics or fine arts or the academics, and they'll work on those areas of interest, and then we'll all come back together so that they can share their recommendations and we can move forward from there. But I appreciate everybody's interest, and I look forward to working with that committee as we move forward. At the time that I wrote this report, we were still working on solidifying the 2021-22 school calendar. That has been completed at this time. We worked on that, and we worked in collaboration with the union. That has been posted, and it's on our website as we speak, and so our families can see next year's calendar moving forward. I want to say thank you to the Railcats and for their continued partnership also with our school district. The Railcats baseball organization has given us their first 2 days of opening day season to our school district. So May 18th and 19th, our students will be traveling to the Railcats. The elementary schools will be going the first day, the kids get to go. Rail Cats are going to provide lunch for all of our students. And some of our students will be able to throw out the opening pitch. We'll sing the national anthem, etc. And then the second day, the middle school and high school students will be able to get to go. So I think that's a great opportunity. And we want to thank the Rail Cats again for their continued partnership. And I'm sure the students are excited about being able to go and run the bases. Hopefully the weather will be good for us. And lastly, we did send out our second survey to our families several weeks ago about re-entry. We have about approximately 250 more kiddos that will be attending school after spring break. And so we are anxiously awaiting for them to come back in person, and we'll continue those efforts as we move forward. So that's all I have, and I'll take any questions that you might have at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Paige? Page 2, okay, Wes. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Dr. McNulty, and maybe I missed it. You're going to have several committees. It sounds like. Do you know exactly how many? You talked about athletics. I'm sure maybe fine arts or something. Could you maybe give us a little bit more detail as to the structure of these committees and subcommittees?
Sure. So this was the referendum ambassadors. So again, it's not a voting committee. So I'm going to break them into their areas of interest based on what those funds might be used for. So some of that would be capital, some of the projects, some of it will be fine art, some of it will be athletic, some of it's going to be towards curriculum, social work type activities. So whatever their interests are, I'd have them break into those subcommittees so that we can have a little bit of a deeper dive conversation, and then they can come back and present to the larger group their recommendations.
Have you identified the exact number of subcommittees or the topics?
I'm going to wait till the group gets there together when we meet the first time, and then we'll decide how many we need to have.
Okay, so nothing's been decided in that area except maybe at a very high level.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to meet with them first and kind of get their viewpoints so that we have some buy-in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. McNulty.
You're welcome.
With that, I do see that Chairman McAdam has shown up. I will turn this meeting now over to Chairman McAdam.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the assist while I was unable to attend at the moment. I believe next up we have the academic update with Kim Bradley.
Yes, good morning, everyone. What I have for you today is a review of the path forward. What I sent to you in the packet was academics and engagement, but I will also go over the fiscal and operations as well. I believe that you have that as well. So in looking at the academics portion of the path forward, you see iReady data, one of the pieces that we were looking at the beginning, and now we've taken the middle of the year assessment and we have some data to compare. So if you look at the chart in the path forward, what we see is that the number of students scoring mid or above grade level and early on grade level has increased, which is what we want to see in reading, and it's also increased in math. And one grade level below, two grade levels below, and three have all decreased for ELA, and for math decreased in two areas. However, we've had a slight increase in the 3 grade levels below for our math. We are adopting a new ELA curriculum. We're working on that. We'll have some information to you soon. And math, we will look at for next school year as well. We realize that math is sometimes an area where more specialized support for students is needed. And in our current state, that has been a little dampened by the pandemic. However, as we look forward to having students back in the classroom fully in the fall, we expect for those numbers to look a little different. For the engagement portion of the path forward, we have boosted our number of members in the community by 92% who believe that our district is on the right track, and we're really excited about that. Surveys have gone out and we've seen increases in the number of folks who really support us and realize that we are doing those things that are necessary to turn the district around. We've extended time for parent-teacher conferences so that they happen during the evening hours so that our families who have parents who work can still attend those with their teachers after what would be normal regular school hours. And then again, just the fact that we're adopting that new ELA curriculum. We have done so with feedback from teachers and a group of curriculum folks from the district area, district office, and our instructional coaches and various teachers. And we're excited about the process. We utilized a rubric that we all agreed upon, and we're really excited to bring the new curriculum pieces next school year. Fiscally, a part of our path forward, one of the pillars is fiscal, and we realize that enrollment has gone up. Very excited about that. We have seen an increase of 65 additional students, and that is one of the largest increases in more than 10 years. And we attribute that to our efforts in making the students the most important part of why we do what we do, the laptops, the focus on best practices. We're excited to receive those 65 new additional students and others as we move forward. And we also see that the deficit has fallen to less than 2 million after reaching 22 million in August 2017. Very excited about that. I'm sure more will be spoken to as we move on in this discussion. And for operations, we've reopened buildings to now a little bit more than half of our students, as Dr. McNulty mentioned earlier. We had a new survey that was responded to last week, and we will have students come into the building, additional students, after spring break on April 12th. We're ready for them. All of our resource officers have been trained in de-escalation, and we've done some refinishing of gym floors. Of course, you are aware of the repaving of the track at Westside, the playground, and repainting at Westside and other schools in our district, and we're excited about those as well. Are there any questions about the path forward or anything that I spoke to today?
Yeah, this is Rebecca Kabaki. I have a question about the math. Are you thinking about doing a summer school program to bring these kids up to the level where they should be for the following year or anything of that sort?
Yes, we do and have extended our summer school offering. So normally summer schools offer to grades 3 through 8 and then the high school level. This year we have a program for K to 12, actually pre-K to 12. So we're focusing on all the students in the district who need that support. And we're actually utilizing this iReady data to target the students who are needed to be invited to those sessions. We have 2 sessions right now running, one for the length of June and then another one for July for our high school students. And we are extending the length of the day. Summer school this year will be from 9 to 2. It'll have a traditional offering and additional STEM offerings for after the traditional offering for summer school. So yes, we have extended those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the student performance growth on the formative assessment data, how does that compare to maybe what other districts are seeing? Have you heard anything about what other districts are experiencing in that area?
So yes, I think after our last discussion, I did reach out to the company and they were able to send, and a couple of the districts, and they had information about just how the pandemic has affected the numbers, and lots of districts across the nation have seen decreases in performance, of course, in ELA and math. And they're pretty consistent with the data that we have here before you as well. So I think that it looks about the same, but we aren't settled on that. You know, we want to improve, of course, and do the best that we can for our students.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Ms. Bradley? I'll ask one more. You talked about the enrollment increase, and Just curious, of the other schools in Lake County, did anyone else see an enrollment increase?
I don't know the answer to that. I may have to acquiesce to Dr. McNulty or others.
I'm not
I'm
sure,
not,
Justin, I'll have to check into that. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
What do you foresee the effect of the learning program that over the time of the pandemic will have on the kids learning through not only getting back into the classroom, but even going forward? Any long-term effect from it?
I would say that yes, there's going to have to be, but there are ways to fill in those learning gaps. And summer school is part of it, extending the day, which is kind of on the table perhaps for the fall. Additional tutoring that will be done through our new funding that is coming through from the federal government. So I believe that yes, there will be some effects. However, as long as we stay ahead of those and understand that that may be the case, we can make certain to have some ways to mitigate those issues.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Ms. Bradley. Appreciate you joining us today.
Yes.
Next up, we have an update on the School Improvement Fund. And for that, we have Rob Tanner here.
Thank you. Not much really to update on the school improvement fund, other than working through these larger contracts. We've started with the mechanical that was approved last month, and so we've ordered all of our equipment, and the prefab work offsite has started. Probably won't see visual signs of work until after the heating season is completely done. But that is moving on. We have been working through the contract for the roof this last month, and that is here for you to view and approve, hopefully. And we put the roof out for bid with this. We're calling this phase one. It is Bailey, Bethune, and the Career Academy or the Career Center, their roofs entirely, and then phase one of Westside Leadership Academy. And we looked at the most critical places for Westside as well as the highest roofs. We like to work from the top down, just so you're not standing on, working on top of roofs that you've already repaired or replaced in the next phases. We put the RFP out just the same exact way as we did with mechanical, following the Indiana guidelines. We did reach out to the Gary Chamber of Commerce as well. We broke it into those 4 bids for each 4 schools. Eventually, when the contractors were selected, there was 2 contractors selected, so we didn't do individual contracts for each building. We just did an individual contract for each contractor, and that's why you see those 2. Originally, we had estimated phase one of Westside Leadership Academy to be $2 million, or a little over $2 million, $2.1 million. So our bid was lower there than we had anticipated. We looked at Bethune, Beverage, Bailey, and the Career Center, and we had estimated somewhere at like $4.1 million for those. Of course, Beverage is not here; it'll be in the next phase. But for the total of the phase one of Westside, Bethune, Bailey, the Career Center, and Beverage, which I said is not here, we estimated that total to be around 6.2 million, and we're at 4.1. I don't believe Beverage will be $2 million. So for right now, we're a little under what we had originally estimated, which is good. And let's see what else. Oh, we scored these through using that rubric with the priority going to WMBs and Gary companies as well. Babilla, as I think Courtney said early, is located in Gary. And then Coryllis has also opened up an office in Gary as well. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Rob. One question I had, and I just don't have the phased list in front of me from the entire school improvement fund plan. How many roofs will be left after these two contracts? You mentioned, I think, beverage. Are there any others that will still are on the list to be replaced?
Yeah, we'll have beverage, and then we'll have West Side will have some more phases, at least one more, but possibly two. And then I think with some of the other schools, like Gary Middle School, and I don't have that in my front of me, but it might not be an entire roof replacement, like there's been some replacement in the past, so it's going to be partial. So there will be some more schools in the later phases as well. I think we had totally estimated about somewhere between around $9 million, give or take, for all the roof work. And so this is about 2/3 of it.
Okay.
Of our estimation.
Great. Other questions for Rob?
Jason, I don't have one for Rob, but I have one for Eric, if I could.
Sure.
It deals with the same kind of situation. And Eric, this is something we've talked about in the past of, seeking funds from outside to come in and help do some of the stuff that's going on. Because roofs are, just expensive, just even starting out. They're just so huge and they cost a lot of money and repairs. But one of the things you see is a lot of money coming from Washington, D.C. and the latest is saying is, there's $100 billion. Strictly, and it's outside the money that's there now is going to build new schools and renovate schools. Are you hitting them up for this money to bring to Gary?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
We want you to get that money and bring it to Gary.
As do we. And let me temper expectations just a little bit. There was some
we want to raise expectations.
Well, no, I'll lower them, then I'll raise them. But there was a news report and some information about 2.5 weeks ago that Gary would receive, and there's 3 rounds of stimulus. So the third round, the ARP money, was $95 million that would flow to Gary.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about this money. There's other money there. You got to go get it. This is not that money that's original. There's other money.
Okay.
There's
more
money there.
Okay. So, 2 things then. So we won't be getting 95 million. It'll be less than that. So that's the tempering expectations. But included in ARP money is the ability to upgrade facilities. And it's very specific. It's not roofs, but it's ventilation, heating, and cooling. And so whatever we can use that money for as it's intended, we plan to do, which would offload some of the original phased work in our school improvement fund. So that's part of the answer. The other part, what you're asking for, the other money, we are going after every dollar we can related to facilities, and anything, even if it's not on our list, it wouldn't have been on our list because we just didn't have enough. We have more needs than resources on our list, so we can add to our list with additional funds, and that's what we're trying to do.
I just want to make sure you look outside of there's another 100 billion up there that's going for schools, and we want it to go to Gary.
As do we.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Wes.
Rob, could you, one thing, I appreciate all your work. This is a monumental, these roofs are critically important along with everything else that's on the list, the boilers and all the way, the track and the playgrounds and so forth. But I'm hoping that you will be working on over the course of the next year, kind of a maintenance plan, if you will, so that that when we're gone, when you're gone, if and when, hopefully not for a while, but for 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road, we've got to document our documents with the help of our vendors that we can leave as a tool for people to refer to help maintain these. I think one of the reasons, well, just to help maintain. So I think it's important that we leave legacy items behind that will help others behind us maintain these things and know what to do, when to do it, and so forth, and how to plan and budget for it.
And I appreciate you saying that. And we've had many conversations and we'll continue to have conversations around building capacity because, we've had that, just what you said, at some point, Gary is going to, be in charge of Gary and they have to have the capacity to continue on with the work that we've done. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we also have, Rob covered the contracts a little bit. Does anyone have any questions regarding the contracts before we move to a vote on that item? All right. Well, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr.
Chairman, is this on the roofing contract, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, correct, on the 2 roofing contracts.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we authorize Gary Schools to enter into the contract with EC Babilla Roofing for an anticipated cost of $2,665,615 and a contract with Corellis Roofing for an anticipated cost of $1,507,809.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right. Courtney, would you call the roll?
Yes. Paul Joyce,
Yes.
Wes Bennett,
Yes.
Tracy Brown,
Yes.
Rebecca Kubaki,
Yes.
and Justin McAdam.
Yes.
5-0.
Great. Thank you. Motion is approved. Our next item of business today is we have a number of financial updates from the Gary Community School team. We're going to start with the Viable Deficit Reduction Plan update, and we have Ricardo Seppin to join us here.
Actually, hey, Justin, before we jump in on that, can we hit on our new member real quick?
Oh, yes. Is he with us?
Not yet, but I just want to make sure everybody is aware.
Yeah, so just to remind everyone, we do have a new advisory member, one of our legislative members. You'll remember that we had Representative Smith during the 2020 year. That shifts from the House to the Senate in 2021, and the Senate has appointed Senator Eddie Melton to serve as an advisory member to the board. He's not a stranger here. He's been here a couple times before. We are in the midst of the legislative session, so he is currently tied up in a committee hearing, but plans to join us, I know, once he is free there. And of course, once we're past session, he'll be able to join us, I think, with more regularity and frequency. So just as an update to those here who are watching. All right, well, with that, we'll move to the Viable Deficit Reduction Plan update, and we do have Ricardo.
Hello, everyone. All right, so for the Viable Deficit Reduction update, this is the 6th update of the original plan. As you know, this update covers data as of December 31st, 2020. The format, if you see in your package, the format pretty much remains the same. The section 1 is the executive summary. We have some graphs and some information just summarizing the entire BDRP report. Section 2.0 presents the initiatives, and what we submitted to the DUAB board, I believe, was the summary where we have in section 2.0 we have the original initiative from the original BDRP, and then we had the update. If you would like to get the actual full report, that is available upon request, just to track how's the update been doing from the first one through the sixth one. But we do have a table here that includes every single number from every single update. Section 3, we have the future initiatives. Those are 3 initiatives that are still to be determined whether we want to pursue those or not. Section 4 is reconfiguring of Gary School District. And those are just there in case the board wants us to look at that information or that those going forward. Okay. And Section 5 is going to be a table that details the plan reduction by year per initiative. Okay. So to go through this report, I'm just going to go through the sector summary. And as I go through the sector summary, if there are any questions, feel free to stop me in the specific session, or you just hold the questions to the end. Up to you guys. So essentially, as I said, this is the 6th update. As of December 31st, 2020, we calculated our deficit at $1.7 million. Okay, that's the deficit just for the revenue and expenditures for 2020. Once we include fund balances, our deficit is actually about $5 million. Okay. The $1.7 million deficit for revenue expenses for 2020 is actually a decrease from $22 million in August 2017 when we began serving as emergency managers. And about the deficit was about $18 million in January of 2018. So it's been decreased by about 16.5 million or 16.3 million ever since then, since January of 2018. In 2019, as of December 2019, the deficit was approximately $6 million. So over the last year, it decreased about $4.3 million as well. For the debt itself, so our total debt as of December 2020 was sitting at about 76.5 million, which is about 76 million in long-term debt and 500,000 in short-term debt. Now, the long-term debt has decreased for 104 million in June 2020, and the short-term debt has decreased from approximately $60 million in June of 2020. Okay, our long-term debt this year, the ratio it was decreasing, took a little bit of a hit because we suspended the repayments of the common school loans. So the long-term debt actually didn't decrease as the decrease ratio was lower in 2020 than in 2019. But that's only because we sent about redirected about $3 million that would have gone to payment of long-term debt to the school improvement fund. Taking that into consideration, if we have not done that, then our long-term debt will have been sitting at about $72 million and not about 76, and that's because we're rounding up or down. So you might see $1 million difference there. For this update, so we have the BDRP, as you know, has 31 initiatives, 28 present and then 3 initiatives that we call future initiatives. As of December 31st, 2020, we had started 74% of those initiatives, and 26% of those had not started as of December 31st, 2020. Just to mention that 26% is a total of 8 initiatives, which includes the 3 future initiatives and another 5 initiatives. 2 out of those 5, we actually, during the process of starting. One is for utility rates audit, which the RFP is already out there. And the other one is the local referendum, which we know that passed in November, but we haven't collected anything, so we have it as non-started as of December 31st, 2020. The next session, I'm looking at the variance analysis table. And that table, what we have here is the first column lists the initiative. The second column lists the actual estimated financial benefit for your original BDRP as of December 31st, 2020. So that just is an estimate of what we expect it to be, the financial benefit to be as of right now, based on the original BDRP. The third column is the actual benefit as of December 31st, 2020 per initiative. Then the variance column, which is column number 4, is the difference. Column number 5 is the status, whether that initiative has been started or not started. And column number 6 is the actual start date or the estimated start date for the initiatives that have not started. If you look at the second page 10 of the BDRP section, you see that the actual variance, total variance for all initiatives is about $25.4 million as of December 31st, 2012. The next section, which is the fiscal impact summary section, just pretty much shows everything that has gone on, or we expect every actual number and every estimated number that we expect going forward. So the first graph, the one with only the green bars, shows the revenue enhancement. So those are the initiatives that bring revenue into the district. The second graph has the revenue enhancement, also has the cost reduction. So the red bars is the cost reduction, the initiatives that actually reduce costs. The third graph incorporates the black bars, which are investments. So there are some initiatives that we have to invest to move forward, such as marketing, hardware and software purchases. The fourth graph in this section brings in a line. The dashed line is actually what we expect. The actual is the actual for the years that have already been completed, so through 2020, and the estimates of the future years, 2021 through 2024, of the total initiatives, of all initiatives per year. The fifth graph in this section brings in a line, solid line for the deficit. So as we see here, the deficit currently sits at $1.7 million. The other graph, the last graph in this section, brings in also a solid line, but green, as a cumulative benefit, including our initiative in the deficit, it's taken into consideration. In this one graph, we see how the from 2018 through 2024, what we expect the total net benefit of the initiatives to be, including all initiatives. Right now, we expect total initiatives to bring in or save us about $144 million, which is about 4.9% off of the original BDRP. Comes up to about 7.5 million. It's a difference. The box graph or box chart, the next page is just kind of showing a picture of what each initiative is going to bring in over the long run, with 2T being the biggest one, which is the reduction in force and attraction, and then followed by 2E, which is the local referendum. So the size means it just kind of states how much we expect to the initiative, what financial benefit we expect the initiative to produce. The next page is just the legend of the box graph. Now, this table here is the table that I referenced during the introduction, where you can see this is a table on page 20 of the BDRP package. This table here is where you can reference what each initiative has been updated to in each of the updates and the original BDRP. Okay, so this one gives you a brief overview of what we expect from each initiative as we move forward. Which will have the same total that we saw in the graph earlier of 144 million for the last update number 6. The next page is the same language we have in the previous initiative, just kind of saying there are multiple paths to get into fiscal solvency. It's just not those initiatives, but there are different ways to get there. And I believe that was said for the BDRP section. Any questions?
Yep, but thank you, Ricardo. Before I'm going to jump in real quick, just to tag on to what Ricardo presented. Thank you, Ricardo. As you can tell, the VDRP update number 6, if you look at the entire report, it's closing in on 1,000 pages. And so that's why we just bring forward the executive summary today. We're happy to go through the entire report with anybody at any time. But Ricardo did go through some of the executive summary, but at a detail level. I just want to make sure we don't bury the lead. And the lead is that the deficit that we're reporting that we can document is $1.7 million as of the end of 2020. And with that, we can answer any questions.
Well, if you can't hear me, I'm clapping, and I'll just do that because it needs to be done. It's a phenomenal accomplishment, and I don't want us to lose sight of that number. The 1.7 million, starting from 22 million just a few years ago, is quite an accomplishment and a testament to the work that all of you have done there on the ground. So, thank you on behalf of the state, on behalf of the citizens of Gary. You guys have done a great job. We're not there yet, but we're getting pretty close, and that's exciting.
Yes, I agree.
If I could add one thing to that same thing. Eric, on page 84, you have the 5-year projected fiscal forecast. And under 2021, which I believe will come this year, I believe if you look at the overall fund balance, it's positive. Right?
Yeah, I think so you're looking at the 5-year forecast that is outside of the VDRP. Is that, make sure I'm tracking with you?
On page 84 is where I'm looking.
Yeah, I think Nicole is going to cover that a little bit later. If you don't mind waiting to give her a chance to present that, Paul.
I'll be fine. All right, thank you.
And sorry.
No, Courtney, please go.
I just wanted to jump in and kind of also hit on a clarification point, something that Ricardo had kind of mentioned. So we have kind of the deficit of the 1.7 million, and that calculation really is focused in on that revenues less expenses. Ricardo then had mentioned that also then when you factor in fund balances, it's at 5 million. I just want to make the distinction that we have kind of two different things that we're tracking here. We do have the revenues minus expenses kind of calculation of whether or not on an annual basis we have a balanced budget. But secondly, the Gary Community School Corporation does still have one fund, their operations fund, that has a negative fund balance. And I think you'll probably see it a little bit more in some of the other items that we'll talk through. That is something that they're continuing to address and continuing to work on. It's been in existence for many, many years. So continuing to kind of dig out of that hole. But that's kind of the distinction between why there were kind of two numbers offered. One just really being an annual number, and then one being more of that cumulative total.
Eric, one thing I wanted to pick up on here, when we look at the fund, when we look at the deficit of 1.7 million, that is not including the revenue we expect to be coming from the referendum starting later this year. Is that right?
That is correct. This is, the 1.7 is through the end of December of 2020 actuals.
So once that referendum kicks in, that's going to flip us positive, assuming that the collections come in the way that we expect that they will. And we have no reason to expect they won't. And is going to leave you guys with a little bit of a cushion there, and which I know was part of the design, so that we have the ability to make some other investments then along the way.
Yes. Now I'm kind of grinning, laughing at Mr. Joyce because I'm tempering expectations again. As Courtney mentioned, we have the negative fund balance in the operations fund that we have to continue to address. We've been chipping away at that, or flipping around, as Courtney said, digging out of the hole. And so that is part of the financial equation that we have to solve for. But you're right, the referendum puts us in the ability to create a surplus.
Right, and then we have to use some of that surplus to begin digging our way out of that hole.
Correct.
But in the long run, it's a good place to be.
Absolutely.
One other thing I wanted to pick up on here, that we've talked a lot about debt, short-term, long-term debt, accounts payable. I think it's notable, if I'm tracking this correctly, when you guys took over, the total debt for the district was around 104 million.
Correct.
In June of 2017, and we are now down to a total of 76 million here as of December of last year.
That is correct.
So again, a continuous decline and chipping away at that debt, and with that, no short-term debt, which is those accounts payable. And I know that's something we've had in the positive for a long time.
Right, and that's an indicator. Speaking your language of fiscal indicators, that's one of the indicators of a healthy fiscal operation, is that short-term debt is limited to a normal business cycle for accounts payable. And we fluctuate between $500,000 and maybe $750,000, depending on the month, of a normal cyclical accounts payable. And we've maintained that for, I'm going by memory, at least a year, maybe close to 2, to maintain that typical business operation cycle.
I'm actually going to ask a question to Wes, but related to this. Wes, as we look at a normal school corporation, not Gary, but other school corporations around the state, is a $76 million debt load unusual for a school corporation of this size, or is it fairly typical for schools to have a debt load like that?
Justin, off the top of my head, I think it's that's in the neighborhood. Yeah, I think that's, I certainly run those numbers pretty quickly, but a lot of times, but this debt, it depends on what the debt's for, but typically buildings and large capital projects. I think one thing that Gary, and I think we all know this, that Gary is probably needing at some point, if they continue on, is building someplace. I don't know what that looks like. I made Paul just real nervous when I said that, but so whether that's a K through 8, K through 6, a new high school, any healthy school system is continuously upgrading their current buildings and then planning for their expansion. I know the ones here in Hendricks County have expanded very rapidly, and so they're I'm sure they're even higher than Gary is from a debt load standpoint.
Justin, I'll add a little bit to the answer. It's been at least a year since I did some analysis, but a year ago, I think Gary was in the 70th percentile for debt load in aggregate, as well as per student. That seemed like a good way to measure across different districts across the state. Not where we want to be, and we're probably further along today than the last time I looked at it, but it's, as Wesley used his phrase, within range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly not at the extreme.
Correct.
Other questions for Eric and Ricardo on the viable deficit reduction plan? We are going to move to Nicole after this to talk through some of the more detailed financial presentations, but on the VDRP. All right, well, Nicole, turn it over to you. You can just tick through them here.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Ricardo kind of presented everything and how we ended 2020, I kind of want to touch on where we are so far for the first quarter of 2021 and where we can be in the future. I'll kind of go through our cash flow worksheets. So for the education fund for 2021, we ended the 2020 with a balance of about $4.5 million. Included this year, you will see our transfer in of $1 million for the referendum fund to cover the teacher raises, and that's about an $83,000 transfer each month. The DLGF has approved for the education fund a $35 million budget this year for 2021. And we are projected to end the year with a healthy balance of about $5 million. For the debt service fund, this fund is pretty standard. What gets levied in gets paid out. So for 2021, we have about $13.8 million budget, which is more than sufficient to pay off our debts this year. So you'll see in January, we made 3 payments on our notes. And then going forward for the end of December, we'll end with a little bit of a cash surplus. This also includes our transfer of the common school loans to the education fund to make them whole. Those are still included in the levy, even though they are suspended at this time. And then for the operations fund for 2021, we ended the year of 2020 with a $8.7 million deficit in this fund. This actually was pretty flatlined for the year. So that kind of goes to show that we were able to control expenses. This deficit did not grow. So we ended this fund about what we expected we would end it for 2020. The DLGF did approve a budget of $5.2 million in this fund. We originally had requested $16 million. So we do have some reduced appropriations for our operations fund. I think we're going to be on track for controlling spending in operations, hopefully between 12 to 15 million. I think last year we ended with about 16 million. But now that we have some additional federal funds, as well as our 1065 school improvement, I think that's going to allow us to make renovations that will allow us to install new equipment. So we're not paying those overage maintenance costs monthly on those items. So I think our goal to end 2021 in the operations fund, we're looking at more of about a $5 million deficit. So as time continues on, we'll slowly, kind of climb out of that hole. And it's going to take some time. It took us some time to get here, and it's going to take some time to get out of it. But I think we're making some good progress. A couple of the new forecasts that we added. So those were our typical kind of cash flow worksheets. You've seen those in the past, but we wanted to expand on a 5-year forecast and what that looks like. There's a couple of assumptions that are built into this. For education, we're still projecting about a 5% growth rate in our ADM calculation. And then I've kind of kept our basic grant. We calculated our per student complexity information that had just recently come out. And so that basic grant is a very conservative number on what we're anticipating for the future years. So you'll see in time over the next 5 years, including our 15% transfer from out of education into operations, that we're, each year that education fund still remains very healthy and will continue to grow and allow us to have a strong budget to request in future years. For the operations fund, same situation. You'll see that our ending fund balances, that deficit number is going to decrease over the years. So we'll eventually become whole in that account after a couple years, which is great news. Some of those things are definitely contingent on being able to request more appropriations and that fund as we reduce the deficit each year. Hopefully by 2021, 22, our budget will grow. Debt service, same thing. We will have more than enough levy to cover our debt obligations in future years. There's really no changes in that account. And then the new account this year that we'll be projecting, which is a little hard to do because we haven't received our first payment yet for the referendum fund, is our operating referendum. So we're anticipating there's about a $12 million levy. We're anticipating collecting about 72% or so of that. So we've had a budget for about 8.9 million in the referendum fund. And I know, Mr. Joyce, I think you had some questions on this. Did you want to ask those now?
Yeah, I'm wondering why you're limiting your 15% transfer from the education fund to the operations and maintaining that negative balance throughout, because it really is turning positive for the overall fund balances at 2021, which is the ultimate goal of where we're trying to move to as a board into being more solvent than not. Could you run that by me? I mean, I understand there's a 15%, but it's the language that it uses is try to stay under that 15%. But is there a reason you're choosing to do it the other way right now?
Not necessarily. We do have a couple kind of, budgetary tricks up our sleeve this next year for the cycle. And I think making it higher than 15% transfer would be probably wise to help get us out of that deficit, which would allow us more appropriations in the operations account going forward, as well as possibly making a transfer of the U.S. Steel funds into the operation account. So those are things that we should, discuss and analyze how that will affect us budget-wise and what time those transfers would be best made. But I agree. I think that is something that we should do. I just wanted to be as conservative as possible kind of in this initial model, but there will definitely need to be some changes that I think can launch us into a better projection going forward.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not maintaining, huge balances within our education fund and the operations fund, still maintaining those negative balances. I mean, in the projection, we have it continually growing to, we have balances of like $14 million, but yet at the same time, we were still showing deficits down here in our operations fund. And I mean, it is important to understand that one of the reasons we the stressing appeals board was, brought on to look at Gary was to move this out of that deficit balance and to move them into that viable position for them to move forward. So, I mean, I think that the forecast itself is definitely showing that. And, as we were talking earlier, and we're on that verge of moving into that positive world. And that's something to be very proud of for the school corporation. And I don't want to underrate, how proud I am, but I know all the other members are of the school corporation getting to that point. It's a huge milestone.
I agree, and I definitely think in future years we'll be able to increase that education fund budget, make some additional transfers, those type of things to kind of close that gap. I would say, if you were to ask me 6 months ago, kind of where our basic grant information would have been, we were still kind of anticipating cuts. So now that that's kind of off the table with the pandemic and things are definitely progressing, I think we can be a little bit more, courageous in kind of our expectations for this fund.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. Nicole, I feel like I should know this answer, but I just can't. Maybe I don't, but I'm curious to understand, curious to know why you're estimating revenue collections, levy collections at different amounts depending on the fund.
That's a great question. We've actually done a lot of research in this because it was kind of a hard one to answer. Typically, most municipalities outside of Lake County don't have this issue. And I think because of Lake County and being one of the last counties to really feel the full effect of that higher circuit breaker, for whatever reason, we are collecting different funds at a different rate. Typically, other schools in the area have a smaller margin than we do. It's not as dramatic from 90% to 75%, but they are collecting at a different rate as well. So I know, Courtney, you may be able to kind of touch a little bit on this. I know you've done some research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wes, I had the same questions when I saw that. It really does come back to Gary Schools being within Lake County, and then more specifically with the way that the local income tax is handled in Lake County as it pertains to the PTRC.
Okay.
So, and I'm happy to circle up and walk you through that at some point as well, but that's really where it comes to.
The PTRC. I forgot about the PTRC done differently in Lake County. That would explain a lot of it, I'm sure. So,
yep.
Thank you for that, Nicole. You feel, how conservative are you with the now that I understand the 90 and the 75 and the 73? How conservative are you in those figures?
Those are average. So our 75% collection rate is average for the debt service. And referendum, again, this is new to us. So I'm assuming that, worst case scenario, it'll be about 75%. Best case scenario, it could be 90%. So if we end up collecting more than that, I mean, that would be fantastic. And then we can ask for a bigger budget the next year. So I do tend to be more conservative in those figures.
Yeah. And I would just echo, I don't need to expand upon State Examiner Joyce's comments, but I would certainly associate myself with his comments in trying to get that negative move to the positive by making a higher transfer. So thank you, Nicole. It's very, very thorough and really a lot here, but yet you presented it very well. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last worksheet, and this was something I were trying to give a little bit more detail. So it's a budget versus actual. I just wanted to look at our two major funds for education and operations and kind of break out those expenses into some more detailed categories, kind of highlighting some specific areas and kind of seeing where we lie so far in the year if we're on budget. So for the education fund, we're right on target. About 74% of the first quarter budget's been used. We have one more month to go, which now was March, but is over. And I've run some preliminary numbers and we're right on target for quarter one for the education fund. Operations fund kind of just shows the same thing. We did request that $16 million and we only have $5 million approved. So there will be some need for additional appropriations in the operations fund. We'll have to be a little bit more creative and utilizing other funds like the 1065 as well as federal funds to kind of offload some of those maintenance expenses on a monthly basis that are relatively high that we're incurring all the time. So once those old HVACs get replaced and we get some new equipment, those costs will drop down. So I'm hoping that later on in this year that those numbers will kind of even out a little bit more and we'll be right on target with the deficit on our cash flow worksheet. And I think that was all I had, unless anyone had any other specific questions.
Nicole, one quick question on the cash flow scenario. It looks like you're being, I think this is right, you're being fairly conservative in your estimates of tuition support increases. That even though we are hopeful and working to grow the district every year, you're not building that in yet. You're not taking it till you get it. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And I think, I'm optimistic that we will hit those numbers, but I want to make sure that any financial decision we make from here on, that we are making it in good faith and being good stewards of the money that we have, that we're not biting off more than we can chew, per se.
I think that's prudent. I think that's the right approach. Easier to spend money that you didn't expect than to cut money that you thought you'd have.
Absolutely.
Other questions for Nicole before we move on? Or really any questions about the financial update that we have here today? All right. Well, our next item, we have some updates on the path forward and some outreach updates. I know that Ms. Bradley covered some of that in her initial presentation. Is there anything else in addition that you wanted to touch on, Ms. Bradley?
No, I don't think that I do. I have all
Okay.
of them. Yeah, I spoke to all of it.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to Ricardo again for an update on the Path Forward dashboard.
All right, so the dashboard. The first thing I need to say is that this dashboard, this version has been already posted to the district website. So what we did for this version of the dashboard, we updated the previous format to the one you see on your package. And we also updated the data points that the data is available to update. I just wanted to note that a lot of the graphs are going to be blank or empty, and that's because we don't have the data to update that information until later in the school year. We'll get it during May or June of this current school year. So I'm just going to go very quickly, just briefly go through the data points that we have updated since December when we previously presented the dashboard. And then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. So the data points that have been updated, academics, no updates in any of those measures, not until at least May of 2021. Engagement, we have a couple of updates here. The first one is related to sex or initiative or measure 2A4, which is to update the dashboard and present it in March. We're doing that currently. Next one is initiative 2B6 through 8, 3 of those, and those are related to the frequently asked question documents and whether the documents were that document was updated in January, February, and March and posted on the website. They have for all 3 months. The next measure that we updated were related to committees and whether those committees have conducted a second meeting. They have, the Technology and Food Service Committee have conducted second meetings. Next one for engagement is 2C11, which again is the committee meeting for the Food Services Committee. And the last one for the engagement update is related to measure D2D3, which is whether each advisory committee met at least one more time during the 2021 school year. They continue to meet frequently. And those were all the updates for the engagement section of the dashboard. I'm gonna move over to the operational measures. For the operational measures, we only have the data to update 2 measures currently. The first one is 3B5, which is whether the preliminary report was provided to DUAB in March 2021, which it was. And we're talking about the connectivity report here. And the last 2 sections that needed to be updated for the operational measures were related to measure 3.3 and 3C.3 and then 4. And it's related to the training of officers and de-escalation training, whether they receive appropriate training through for those employees after September 1st, 2020, I would suggest, and whether they receive pro data training hours on employment bay on a full semester. That was suggest. For the fiscal section of the dashboard, we currently have no updates. Again, that will be updated in the future within the next 3 or 4 months when the data is available. Any questions?
Any questions for Ricardo? I think we're getting hungry, so we'll keep going. Thank you, Ricardo. Appreciate your time today. So our last item of scheduled business today is the transportation contract, and we have Dr. McNulty and/or Nicole to help us understand that.
Okay, I'm going to take that, Justin. So you'll recall that in September, I presented to DUAB that we referenced an option to renew our current contract, but that we were still going to issue an RFP so that we could explore our options. We did do that, and we evaluated the proposals, and we did enter into a conversation with First Student at that time. We did have discussions with them, and after lengthy discussions, we were unable to come to an agreement. The school corporation, as it was stated in the RFP, reserves the right to reject any and all proposals and discuss operating options with 1 or more proposals, or to enter in such discussions or negotiations. So after lengthy conversations and looking at all options, we've decided to extend a 1-year renewal to Illinois Central at this time. The estimated cost for the 2021 will be a range between $4 million and $4.6 million. And that takes into account several factors such as the routing, number of tiers, buses, auxiliary services such as athletics and field trips, etc. Any questions?
Dr. McNulty, just real quick to clarify, this is a one-year renewal.
Correct.
So you guys will have the opportunity to go back to the marketplace next year if you choose
That's correct.
to take a look at those options again, if that seems desirable.
This
Any
is
questions
Rebecca.
for Dr.?
Yeah, Dr. McNulty, how long is the standard contract? This is only going to be for 1 year. Do you do multiple year contracts and have you in the past?
Yes, the contract that we're just talking about right now was a 3-year contract. So they're generally 3 to 5 years.
Knowing that or having the other bid saying that we're not going to bid for you guys again because you've turned us down, how does that limit the other people that you can go to? I mean, are there a lot of companies out there that provide this service?
There are several. We did have one other company that bid, but they did not bid on the entire package. So it was not a viable option. We certainly hope that other vendors will come forward, and certainly hope that First Student will come back if we so choose to go out for a bid again.
Mr. Chairman.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, along the same lines, Dr. McNulty, do you anticipate coming out in a year, or what's going to happen a year from now, or potentially?
Yes, we would like to explore options again next year. I'm not sure that we'll go out again, but we definitely will take that and look through our options again next year. We definitely are going to consider it. Yes.
So you have the ability to do 1-year extensions multiple times?
I believe we have one more after this one. They have one more built in.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, hearing no other questions, would entertain a motion. We do need to approve this contract as it triggers the threshold for DUAB approval.
I'll move it. I move we authorize Gary Schools to enter into a 1-year renewal of its current contract with Illinois Central School Bus Company for transportation services for the 2021-2022 school year.
Good, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have a little bit, Justin, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I'd just like to thank Courtney, yourself, Dr. McNulty, Mr. Parrish, for taking time to go through the contracts and working with the different companies to get detailed information that was within the contract to ensure that it's a contract from the school corporation, with a vendor and not really the vendor to the school corporation kind of dictating the rules and the outcomes from that. I mean, this is a $4.6 million contract up to a 4.6. It's very relevant to Gary Community School Corporation to understand the cost that are in the contract, and the bidders need to always be responsive to those expectations and request for details of those costs. And I think going through that is where we ended up today. So I just want to thank them for their due diligence in going through the contracts, all of you for going through that and going forward and finding what's best for Gary Community Schools.
Yep.
Thank you, Paul. All right. Courtney, would you call the roll?
Paul Joyce,
Yes.
Wes Bennett,
Yes.
Tracy Brown,
Yes.
Rebecca Kubacki,
Yes.
and Justin McAdam.
Yes.
5-0.
All right, contract is approved. That's the end of our formal agenda for today. Is there any new business to come before the board today? All right. Well, hearing none, we will adjourn. Before we do that, just as a reminder, there will be a survey at the end. That's a WebEx survey, not a survey for DUAB. So if you want to provide comments, the contact information is available on the website, and I believe Courtney has it up here as well at the end. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.